Much study has been done of the comparative experience and policies of Canada with its southern neighbor, the United States, and this is a topic of intense discussion within Canada. Under the Canadian Constitution, the power to establish criminal law and rules of investigation and trying crimes is vested in the federal government. The provinces are responsible for law enforcement, although provincial policing in many jurisdictions is contracted to the Federal and National Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and while the power to prosecute offenses belongs to the federal government, responsibility for prosecutions is delegated to the provinces for most types of criminal offenses. Laws and sentencing guidelines are uniform throughout the country, but provinces vary in their level of enforcement. Historically, the violent crime rate in Canada is lower than that of the US, and this continues to be the case. For example, in 2000 the United States rate for robberies was 65% higher. Its rate for aggravated assault was more than double, and its murder rate was triple that of Canada. However, the rate of some property crime types is lower in the US than in Canada. For example, in 2006, the rates of vehicle theft were 22% higher in Canada than in the US. Since violent crimes are a smaller fraction of all crimes, the difference between the two countries is less than the homicide rate might make it seem, and the overall rates are generally close. See crime in the United States. Furthermore, in recent years, the gap in violent crime rates between the United States and Canada has narrowed due to a precipitous drop in the violent crime rate in the US. For example, while the aggravated assault rate declined for most of 1990s in the US and was 324 per 100,000 in 2000, the aggravated assault rate in Canada remained relatively steady throughout and was 143 per 100,000 in 2000. In other areas, the US had a faster decline. For instance, whereas the murder rate in Canada declined by 36% between 1991 and 2004, the US murder rate declined by 44%. Surprisingly, both Saskatoon and Regina consistently have violent crime rates that would place them among the 10 most violent cities in the US, and often individually exceed larger U.S. centers in terms of total numbers for aggravated assaults and robbery. The homicide rate in Canada peaked in 1975 at 3.03 per 100,000 and has dropped. Since then, it reached lower peaks in 1985, 2.72, and 1991, 2.69. It reached a post-1970 low of 1.73 in 2003. The average murder rate between 1970 and 1976 was 2.52. Between 1977 and 1983 it was 2.67. Between 1984 and 1990 it was 2.41. Between 1991 and 1997 it was 2.23, and between 1998 to 2004 it was 1.82. The attempted homicide rate has fallen at a faster rate than the homicide rate. By comparison, the homicide rate in the US reached 10.1 per 100,000 in 1974. Peaked in 1980 at 10.7 and reached a lower peak in 1991, 10.5. The average murder rate between 1970 and 1976 was 9.4. Between 1977 and 1983 it was 9.6. Between 1984 and 1990 it was 9. Between 1991 and 1997 it was 9.2, and between 1998 and 2004 it was 6.3. In 2004, the murder rate in the US dipped below 6 per 100,000, for the first time since 1966. Approximately 70% of the total murders in the US are committed with firearms, versus about 30% in Canada. This is due to the Canadian gun laws in Canada,